My name is Ray Kirkriver. I've been married for 23 years. My child has graduated from college and moved out for a job. With no kids at home, there seems to be no conversation, just a cold air drifting through. I also felt something off about my husband's behavior, and while I doubted it was an affair, I hired a detective to check. Even though I thought it couldn't really be an affair, it turns out it was. Shocked by the revelation, I was dazed as I looked at the investigation report. Seeing me like this, my mother-in-law looked at me curiously. "What's wrong, Ray?" I've been living with my mother-in-law for quite a long time. But I've always felt a certain coldness, more than a sense of family. However, surely as a woman, she would be on my side regarding my husband's affair. Thinking this, I showed her the investigation report. "Oh, what's this?" I noticed Ken was acting strange, so I hired a detective agency. And it turns out, he was having an affair, at his age. Oh, dear. You found out then? Huh? You found out? Well, you would have found out sooner or later anyway. You knew about this? I knew. She's a good girl, quite young at 30, but very sweet. They might be counting down to a wedding soon. What? A wedding? The next wife is the granddaughter of a CEO of a company worth $600 million. Ken's really outdone himself. Granddaughter of a $600 million fortune. Amazing, right? I was shocked too. That Ken could land such a big fish. A big fish. Well, who else but Ken could catch such a fantastic catch? That's why you're no longer needed. No longer needed. Marriage isn't supposed to be like that, is it? That's how it is. He found someone new, and she's the granddaughter of a very wealthy family. Staying married to you when he could be with her would be foolish. Mother, isn't that harsh? After all we've been through as husband and wife. Marriage is just about separating when you're no longer needed. If you're around, he can't remarry. Here, fill out these divorce papers. What? You even prepared divorce papers? It's better to be prepared for moments like this, isn't it? Shouldn't this be something discussed between the people involved? Between the people involved, you mean Ken and Ray? Yes. There's no need for that. Even if you talked with Ken, the result would be the same. Divorce is the only option. It's better to just sign the divorce papers quickly. That's. I could understand if Ken himself told me. But why are you the one saying this? It seemed that whatever I said didn't reach the ears of my mother-in-law, who was too giddy. Looking at her like this, something occurred to me. My mother-in-law is generally a person who doesn't like going out much. She even finds shopping bothersome, claiming she is healthy enough without needing to walk, despite suggestions that it's good for her health. Yet, she had recently started going out on her own initiative. And when she returned, she'd be carrying large shopping bags. Her clothes were from expensive brands, and so were her shoes and bags. It was strange because she shouldn't have the money for such things. But now, it all makes sense. Basically, she was trying to get on the good side of the new girlfriend, who was showering her with gifts. Even with food, whereas she used to not complain about simple meals, she recently started saying, "I don't want to eat something this poor," and complaining, "The seasonings are cheap, that's why it doesn't taste good." She even demands that salads be served with pasta or curry, and insists on having fruit for dessert. Regarding coffee, she scoffed at instant coffee, saying, "I can't believe I've been drinking this dreadful thing, despite having it for years. This just doesn't suit my taste anymore." I couldn't understand why she suddenly started saying such things, but now it was clear. Frequenting outings and eating gourmet food had spoiled her taste. Thus, she came to believe that cheap stuff was unacceptable, thinking herself too bourgeois for it. Ken was similar, becoming overly concerned with fashion despite being just a salaryman. He'd buy expensive shampoo and say, "Don't use it, it's mine." Though he'd be absent-minded when I talked to him, he got along incredibly well with my mother-in-law, especially when discussing branded goods. But the idea of a 50-year-old man having an affair seemed unimaginable, not to mention out of character. At home, he'd wander around in just his underwear, picking his nose and not washing his hands. He'd leave used tissues around and wear the same clothes for days if I didn't prepare something else. It was such a drastic change, it made me wonder how he could change so much. And even though our child is already an adult, why start an affair now? I had thought we would just enjoy our retirement together, traveling or sharing hobbies. Traveling together with my husband, enjoying hobbies together, and gardening were things I had planned. Was I the only one thinking about such things? Though I know about mid-age divorces, it's too much to push all the care of my mother-in-law onto me. It's just awful. And to think, the granddaughter of a CEO of a $600 million company. Is he only thinking of his own happiness? What was all my effort, patience, and hard work for? This is just the worst. While I was thinking all this, my mother-in-law was beside me, shouting to hurry up and sign the divorce papers. What was I to these people? What are you dawdling for? Signing divorce papers is just writing your name, just do it quickly. Really, you're slow until the very end. You would go that far. Oh, I'm just telling you the truth, what are you getting upset about? I see, fine then. Filled with a feeling of I don't care anymore, I hastily signed the divorce papers. Don't expect any help from me in the future. Oh my, what do you think will happen? Do you think I need your help? That's cute. You'll be the one begging for help, you'll see. After all, I'm going to be filthy rich. As if she had become a celebrity, she looked down on me. The affair was Ken's doing, so I'll be taking a hefty alimony. Oh. So it's all about the money with you. I knew you were greedy. Ken should have left you sooner. But fine, I'll give you as much alimony as you want. After all, it's from a fortune of $600 million. Billionaire, here I come. She laughed as if it was no big deal. And you know, the grandfather on that side is quite weak now. He's practically a prime asset. Mother, that's quite harsh to say. The wealthy one is the grandfather, right? That's right. So, you're saying the granddaughter he's with isn't wealthy herself? Oh my, stating the obvious, aren't you? Do you think you've won with that? Even if the granddaughter isn't wealthy, when the grandfather passes away, of course he will leave his inheritance to her. She's his beloved granddaughter. He might not want to give it to his daughter-in-law, but he will to his granddaughter. With $600 million, giving away $100 million or $400 million is nothing, right? Perfectly counting the chickens before they hatch. So, I'll pay you whatever alimony you wish, $10,000 or $200,000, to you poor soul. Is that so? And what about this house? I don't need this old house. After all, the young lady he's marrying lives in a luxury apartment. Once they marry, they'll live there together. Is that so? If that's the case, I'll take the house, if that's all right with you? You want this old house? That's pitiful. Sure, take it. It's a hassle to deal with anyway. If you want this old house, it's yours. Her words were irritatingly condescending. And I'll be making sure we properly divide the assets too. Divide assets? What assets do we even have? At most, this old house and a used car. I'll give those to you. That's good to hear. Then my mother-in-law contacted Ken to tell him the divorce was finalized. Now that the divorce papers are filed, let's move to her apartment right away. Buy new clothes and throw away everything in this house. Ken seemed to agree with her words, and truly, they left the house that same day. As the saying goes, one should not leave a mess when departing, but that parent and child left everything in disarray. They should have at least cleaned up if they didn't want it. Ken and my mother-in-law left their belongings as if they might return if things failed. Afterwards, I demanded a $400,000 alimony payment in one lump sum. Surprisingly, they actually paid it all at once. I wondered where they got that money, but perhaps the other woman really did have it, as my mother-in-law had suggested. At that point, it didn't matter to me. They were strangers now, after all. With a new beginning in mind, I used the alimony as a down payment and bought an apartment for myself. Until now, I had to consider my husband's preferences and my mother-in-law's tastes, choosing curtains and decorations that weren't to my liking. But now, I could fill my space entirely with my own choices. Ah, this feels like my castle. The so-called old house they derided, when demolished and sold as land, fetched a surprisingly high price, much more than I had anticipated. Having uninterrupted time to myself allowed me to pursue a job I had always wanted, and thanks to my hard work, I was able to lead a wealthier life than ever before. Occasionally, my child would come to visit, and it felt like true peace had finally arrived. A year passed in this new phase of my life when I received a call from Ken. What the heck has happened to the house? It had been so long since I heard from Ken that I almost forgot he was my ex-husband when I answered, but that was his first question? Who may I ask is calling? Don't mess with me. I'm your husband. I don't have a husband, actually. Ray, right? Yes, that's right. It's me, Ken. I know that. Since we're divorced, you should watch how you speak to me. Oh, I see. You're such a pain. So annoying. So, what's up? The house is gone. What house are you talking about? The one we lived in together until a year ago. Ah, the house your mother always said was a dump. Why is it gone? I had it demolished and sold the land. Why? Because it wasn't needed. That house was mine, wasn't it? What? When we divorced, it became mine. Your mother gave it to me, saying if I wanted that old dump, it was mine. You were supposed to live in a luxury apartment, weren't you? I didn't agree to any of this. I don't know about that. You said there was no need to talk when I wanted to discuss the divorce. Besides, if it mattered so much, why didn't you call me when we got divorced? If you had, we could have discussed the house then, right? Well, that's true, but... So, you didn't need that house either, right? That means you essentially agreed to it. What did you do with the money from the sale? I used it to pay for my new apartment. Apartment? Whose apartment? Mine. Why would you do that on your own? It's not a problem to do so since we're divorced. Besides, the divorce was because of your affair. This is really troubling. Not having the house is really troubling. What's so troubling about it? I kept asking Ken why it was troubling, but he didn't give any reason. Ray, could you return the $400,000 in alimony? What? Sorry, what did you just say? I said, could you return the $400,000 in alimony? Why should I return it? You paid that alimony because you cheated, right? It was justly awarded to me. I know, but... I need money. Well, you married the granddaughter of a man worth $600 million. Why don't you ask her instead? It's not something a poor person like me should deal with, right? That $600 million belongs to her grandfather. I know that. But you were happy about it, weren't you? You were expecting an inheritance of maybe $20 million or $40 million when he passed away. I never said that. Your mother was the one who said it, all excited. That means you thought the same, right? Well, yeah, I did think that. See, I knew it. That's why I didn't think it was a big deal to be asked for alimony. I thought I could easily pay it back once the grandfather passed away, so I borrowed the full amount to pay it. But then, even after he died, she didn't receive any inheritance at all. It's natural for a grandchild not to receive an inheritance. But still, your mother said grandchildren are beloved and would definitely inherit something. Yeah, my mom told me that too, and I really thought that made sense. Grandchildren aren't legal heirs, but they would surely be left something. But it turns out that was a poor assumption, wasn't it? Exactly. Plus, the luxury apartment we're living in turned out to be owned by the grandfather. Now we have to move out. That's weird. Didn't your wife's parents inherit it? Yes, they did. If the parents inherited it, why don't they let you live in the apartment? The thing is, her parents don't acknowledge our marriage. They wanted to marry her off to someone wealthy, not someone 20 years older and just a company employee like me, who they see as having no value. Value. They said a rich family's daughter who marries a poor man against her parents' wishes should be prepared for this. I see. It's like a princess marrying a commoner and then being treated like one. Rich people really are something else. They're thorough, aren't they? I never expected to be cut off like this. Poor people wouldn't do that. Yeah, that's right. In the end, that's why I ended up without a place to live. But don't you have some savings from before? Since you were such a beloved grandchild. I thought so too and asked, but it turns out there was no savings at all. Oh, why is that? That's because, no matter how much she spends, she gets an allowance of $10,000 a month and she could use her grandfather's credit card freely. She has no sense of saving money. Moreover, she's lived surrounded by luxury goods since childhood, only shops for brand items, and only eats high-end food. She's embarrassed to buy marked-down items at the supermarket. Even if one item would suffice, she feels ashamed and ends up buying in bulk. Huh? What does she buy in bulk? For example, she could just buy her own portion of sweets at the store, but she ends up buying everything on the shelf. She says buying just one is too embarrassing. Wow, that's quite something, fitting for a lady. If she keeps doing this, we can't make ends meet, but when I told her that, she just said to make it work and that was that. It's funny, that's the best. No, that's terrible. With my salary, there's no way I can manage. But you can't help it, right? You married her knowing this. So, help me out. Remember what I said when we divorced? I won't help you no matter what happens. I never thought it would come to this. If I had known the future, maybe I wouldn't have married. But you've lived long enough to expect certain things, right? Anyway, you need to teach your wife about reality. Don't be so cold. Help me. No, I won't. Ken was pleading pathetically, but there's no way I would help someone who betrayed and ridiculed me only to divorce. How naive can he be to call me, not understanding that? I didn't hesitate to hang up the phone, but as soon as I did, I received a call from his mother. Are you a demon? That's her opening line. Oh, hello. It's been a while. You seem well as always. That kind of greeting doesn't matter. Ken called you, why won't you help him? I wasn't expecting him to call. He's asking for help, so why don't you just help him? Help him? I don't want to help, and I told you when we divorced, I wouldn't help him no matter what happened. What did you say then? You said he was marrying a granddaughter of a man worth $600 million. It should have been me asking for help, right? Guess that wasn't the case. What a spiteful woman you are. Yes, I guess I can be quite spiteful. After I supported you for 23 years of marriage. That's what marriage is. Besides, I gave birth to our child, I raised them, I even took care of a troublesome mother-in-law. If all I had to do was work, life would have been easy. How can you say that? If you say something, I will respond. I kept quiet all this time for the sake of family peace. There's no need to hold back now that we're divorced. We're suffering here, you could at least help. That's what humanity is. I don't have such humanity. What if I had asked for help? I guess you wouldn't have any humanity either, right? I even gave you $400,000. Thanks to that money, you can live comfortably now. The peace you enjoy is thanks to my son. You're quite mistaken. That money was spent on buying my apartment. The peace I enjoy now is all thanks to myself. Ah, and thanks to being divorced and becoming a stranger to you. So you're probably not living that great then. You're just poor, aren't you? You're calling me poor? So, marrying a granddaughter of a $600 million fortune, but you're still poor? That's not true. I don't live in luxury. I live in a luxury apartment, go to high-end restaurants every week, enjoy delicious meals, and have dinner with friends. In the last year, I've only been able to travel abroad 4 times. Other than that, maybe buying some favorite brands. How can you afford to do that? Because I work. I don't have a family that saps my time anymore. Work is endless, and thanks to that, my life has become quite comfortable. That luxury apartment isn't all that great, is it? Well, it's nothing special. The facilities in the apartment include a spa and a cafe, and the restaurants change with the seasons. What are those? No. Different, right? Even if there are such facilities, you can only live on the first floor, right? It would be embarrassing to use them if you're on the first floor. Well, with just $400,000, that's what you get. Even if you pretend, you're still poor. First floor, what? It seems people look so small from up here, doesn't it? Was it the first floor? What floor is it? It's the 30th floor. But I regret it. The 30th floor is too high, the view gets boring, and it takes quite a time in the elevator. However, it's really convenient to go shopping within the apartment complex. Why do you get to live like that? I told you, I work. Just by working, that's impossible. I was reassured because I thought I was marrying a wealthy man's granddaughter. You relied on the wrong thing. So, about your young wife, she seems quite loose with money, is that going to be okay? What do you mean? When I checked a year ago, she had debts of $1.8 million. What? Checked, what did you check? I mean your new wife. Since she stole you, I was curious about what kind of person she was. Sneaky, and what about this $1.8 million debt? Oh dear, don't you know? She's been buying brand items and traveling abroad, all on credit. I didn't know that. But until now, her grandfather used to pay off her debts when they got too high. I guess she just can't break the habit. That's ridiculous. Rich people, they do things you wouldn't believe, right? I couldn't believe it when I saw the $1.8 million debt either. Since her grandfather was wealthy, it seemed normal, I suppose. I thought you'd manage somehow since you were happy about the inheritance coming. I thought you'd be fine. I didn't know such a thing. What kind of wife is that, a total dud? Oh dear, that's tough. The mother-in-law was quite shocked and forgot to ask for help, ending the call. Serves them right. A month later, I got another call from Ken. My mom told me. You're actually incredibly wealthy. That's not true. Come on, share some with me. Why should I? There's no need for that, is there? Don't say that. Please, help me out. I told you, I'm not helping. Actually, she has more than $2 million in debts now. It was $1.8 million a year ago, and it's increased? Yeah, if only the grandfather had paid it off before he died. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could pay it. How am I supposed to pay off $2 million? You can't, can you? That's right, I can't. Well, it's her debt, so why don't you have her pay it? I talked to her about it, but she doesn't care at all. She's always had as much money as she wanted, and whenever there was trouble, her grandfather took care of it. She was free to use her cards as much as she wanted. Now that she can't, she says it's stressful and blames me. Well, that's too bad, but it's not surprising. You chose to be with her. I know, but please. If you can't share, at least lend me some. I have no intention of lending you anything. Why should I lend to someone who can't pay it back? You need to stop being so naive. Don't say that. If things continue like this, I'll have to declare bankruptcy. Well, maybe you should. You're already poor, so bankruptcy shouldn't be too scary for you. I just want to get a divorce. If you want to divorce, then do it. It might be easier than you think. Really? Your parents don't even acknowledge your marriage, so if you say you want to divorce, it might actually be a relief for them. You think so? A no-good 50-year-old man and a 30-year-old lady. From a parent's perspective, they probably want you to divorce. Yeah, that makes sense. Ken seemed persuaded by what I said and mentioned he would discuss divorce. He then ended the call. And it seems he did talk to her parents about getting a divorce. She apparently didn't like the idea, but he insisted it was too much to handle. What a despicable man. However, I got divorced. Oh, congratulations. Now you've escaped her debts, haven't you? That's not exactly what happened. When I brought up divorce to her parents, they were thrilled and immediately produced the divorce papers, but at the same time, they made me sign a contract. A divorce contract? That's unusual. Yes, it was filled with small print that I didn't even bother to read at first. It felt like signing a bomb. What was written in it? Well, it was stuff like I shouldn't use her family name or see her again. That doesn't sound too bad. But when I read it carefully after signing, something terrible was written in it. Among that bombshell was, Ken agrees to take on all of his wife's debts. Wow, typical of the wealthy. In the end, I ended up being responsible for paying $2 million. Oh. I see. What should I do? There's no way I can pay that back. What am I supposed to do? That's tough. So please, I'm begging you. Just $2 million. Lend it to me. It's your fault for signing without reading. But... Ray, please, I'm begging you, Ray. After realizing he wouldn't get anywhere with me, Ken tried to negotiate directly with her parents again. But the outcome was the same, and he was told it was his fault for signing and was sent away. With nowhere else to direct his anger, Ken contacted me again, unleashing a barrage of complaints. Why do I have to bear a debt of $2 million? What have I done to deserve this? That's because he was blinded by the prospect of an inheritance. It's his own fault. I shouldn't have married such a spendthrift woman. Fed up with Ken's daily whining, I finally said, "It's your fault for not reading the divorce contract. No matter how tedious, you would have understood if you had read it properly. How could I be expected to read such a detailed and fine print document? I knew this all too well. That's just the kind of person you are. You never read important documents because it's too much trouble. And you always expected me to handle everything. Well, it was clearly written that you would pay, so there's nothing you can do about it. It's all your own mistake. How can you say something so cold? Would you have read it? Of course. And I knew very well that you wouldn't read such documents. What do you mean? I was the one who drafted that contract. What? I'll tell you why I can live in such an apartment. My job is to consult with wealthy individuals on divorce. That lady has been divorced 3 times already. You were her 4th. You're kidding. Previously, her grandfather would pay off the debts so she could divorce without issues. But this time, her parents were involved, so they came to me wondering if something could be done. Thanks to that, I ended up making a lot of money. No way. Thus, Ken fell into a $2 million debt hell and now lives in a shabby apartment, struggling to pay off his debts while being constantly berated by his mother-in-law, blaming him every day. As for me, since Ken's divorce was finalized, my reputation among the wealthy skyrocketed. Thanks to that, I'm receiving a constant stream of consultations from people wanting to divorce, and I'm making a fortune. For those contemplating divorce, I always advise, divorcing will make you feel liberated.